Main title Pokemon games have been running off of the same formula for decades. You get a starter, you meet your rival, and you challenge the Pokemon League. This probably won't change. I mean, it's a franchise IP video game. Why fix what isn't broken, right? Well, in game dev, there are almost always changes made even if the overarching formula is still being followed. And when a change is made, big or small, it's like tossing a rock into a lake, the change rippling across the rest of the pond and affecting every part of its design. Or even better, changing a cog in a machine will make the machine run differently. It can improve the machine, it can break it, or it can deter its normal and unerring cycles. But the point to always remember is at its core, a change to the machine will affect how it runs fundamentally. And there are plenty of changes that have been made to the Pokemon games across its franchise life. In Generation 3, double battles and weather changing were added. Generation 5 had rotational and triple battle. Gen 6, Mega Evolution. Gen 7, Z-Move. Gen 8, Gigantamaxing. And Gen 9, where we are now, terrestrialization. These are some of the main changes in battle mechanics that the respective generation of Pokemon is kind of known for, but I'm overlooking some major changes, right? It could just be me personally, but unless it's for a competitive game, these kinds of changes aren't what I look for and remember when playing a game. And this is true for Pokemon as well. In Ruby, I remember the simple joy of getting my running shoes for the first time. How am I so fast now? How did we ever live without this? I remember getting stuck at Winona's gym because her Pokemon would always outspeed mine and it would piss me off. I remember how afraid I would get on Victory Road in Fire Red because I would run out of healing items and lose my way. I remember beating the Elite Four in Soul Silver, finishing the end credits, only to reload the game and go, "You mean that I get to play the game some more?" And I remember being frustrated with N's dialogue when he said that he could change people's minds just through power. These are the kinds of things that I look for when I play a game. So what will I remember from Gen 9? Well, to start with, Pokemon Scarlet is open world, so I can go anywhere I want to now, starting from the very beginning of the game. Oh, there's still a tutorial section where they have to show me everything in a super slow and obnoxious way. Oh, well that's okay, because after getting my buddy Koraidon, I'm able to go anywhere I want. Oh, there's still basically HMs that are keeping me from going anywhere that I want. Oh, well that's okay, because after obtaining Swim, High Jump, and especially Climb, I'm able to go Oh, but there are still set levels for the story events in the game. Oh, well that's okay, because I finished it. Oh. So basically, nothing has changed. About the core structure anyway. When I can go to the places where the story will happen, but I can't do anything once I'm there unless I can pass the level gate because the narrative design is still structured with a level gated linear story skeleton, what's really changed? Like, okay, is it really different if I can go anywhere I want, but I can only do what I want or need to do in those places if I've collected enough gym badges to have my Pokemon obey me because there's a dictated level cap? And have high enough level Pokemon to beat the story event? When you as a game dev give players agency and priority over where they can travel in a game world, I think it should be done with the intent and understanding that players will try to go anywhere and will try to do anything. And when the game's combat design is not solely composed of skill-based mechanics and damage output, but also on hit chance and in-game experience differences as well, the game should be suited so that going anywhere or doing anything won't essentially punish the player for doing so. In Scarlet and Violet, when players travel to a new location or marker on their map, they only have a subset of information: where a story event is, what Pokemon type the event will be centered around, and what the trainer's or Pokemon's relative skill level is. Letting players know through the map which order you recommend taking on the story events feels the same to me as having the story events be in order. Going back to the cog and the machine metaphor, the game feel is slightly different because players can travel anywhere they want now, but unless they're a knowledgeable player of the game, it's not likely that they'll do many of the story events out of the recommended level order. They'll arrive at a new location, see that the story event is like 30 levels higher than their level 12 Salty, and go, well, is there anything else I can do around here? I mean, I came all this way. And to be fair, on this point, I have friends I've talked to who cleared story events while they were like 20 levels below the highest opposing level Pokemon available at the story event. And while I find this really cool, I would say it's not necessarily accessible to everybody because the way that they were able to beat those story events were either with really intricate strategies and movesets or just really high statted Pokemon for their given level range. And not every player is going to have this knowledge of the game. Some players don't want to look things up just to go where they want to go in an open world game. And personally, I don't think they should have to. I don't think they should have to compromise their playstyle or exploration choices just because the game isn't structured to be open world. Pokemon is traditionally a linear progression-based game, and they didn't completely revamp the mechanical structure of the narrative to stop being progression-based and start meshing with the new open world design that they implemented. And players would still be able to perform these intricate strategies even if the game tried more to make it mesh if they had a form of level scaling on story events through how many gym badges they've collected. Like in the Pokemon Origins anime, basically the player would be able to explore whatever they want, take on a story event, and then the next story event that they find would have its level be scaled off of how many story events they've completed. Then it'd be a much better match with the new open world design because a player could perform story progression without compromising their exploration. But as a counter to a counter to a counter to this point, it seems like they might have already thought ahead on this topic to a degree, in the form of terror raid battles. Terror raid battles allow players to battle alongside friends and capture high-level Pokemon by working together to down them. This is actually a pretty good remedy to the issue that I've put forth because not only does it give players access to higher-level Pokemon more easily, but if a player succeeds in catching or defeating the Terror Raid Pokemon, they also obtain a bunch of EXP candies, which cuts down on having to grind their current Pokemon up to their chosen story event's level to, you know, stand a chance against it. This still doesn't bypass the game's cap on how high a Pokemon level can be that will obey you, but we're trying to provide players a means to progress while maintaining their explorative creativity, not one to overkill challenges. So to recap what we've discussed so far, what is different about Scarlet and Violet than previous entries? The narrative structure is essentially the same, the method of travel's game feel has been ramped up, and much of the way that players catch Pokemon or battle trainers has been streamlined. But what about the meat and potatoes of the narrative? The story itself? What about the characters and the plot points? I mean, it's a Pokemon game, it's a JRPG. Some of this video had to be centered around the story. How has this changed, and how should it have changed given the new world design? Well, for one thing, the game's story is about what you value in an adventure. And that's the portion of the open world narrative gameplay interactivity that Scarlet and Violet get right. Your treasure. The game is always indulging you to find out what you value in Pokemon and then giving you the tools to do that thing. Do you like collecting Pokemon? Here are locations of many of the species that could be spawning right around you. Don't really care about collecting Pokemon, but you're a natural born Pokemon trainer? Here are gyms and trainers to test you to be the best in all of Paldea. No, you're not a trainer? You care more about the mysteries that the open world has to offer? Don't even worry about it. Ignore the trainers. They're not mandatory anymore. Explore and find wondrous things. The game is open for the most part, and it'll rarely stop the player from doing what they care about, especially not with irrelevant cutscenes like so many times in past games. No dictated story path does mean that some plot points can feel like they matter less at times, but it's almost what I've always wanted in a Pokemon game. This time around, it matters that you're the one experiencing the story and interacting with the characters, not that the story and characters are there at all, or that the world is in danger or whatever. I didn't care about the story and characters and Pokemon that I found this time around because the game told me that I should care about them. I cared about them because the game let me explore at my own pace and let me discover interesting and tragic facts about each of these people and Pokemon. I cared about the world because the game allowed me and encouraged me to make mistakes and find out new things about myself and others. And these things are like, duh. Obviously, I think this type of thing should be standard for an open world game, where the driving forces are a fun gameplay loop, compelling characters, and your interest in the given world. But that's kind of just the tip of the iceberg, right? I would like it if games started taking steps forward towards the paths or decisions that the player chooses actually mattering. Like in Scarlet and Violet, you still have to do all 3 story paths because the 3 story path endings don't really feel like endings. So it's almost kind of like they weren't 3 separate storylines to begin with. So yeah, Scarlet and Violet aren't perfect open world games, but I'm inclined to give them a bit of a pass since it's Pokemon's first mainline game with being open world. Just, you know, do it better next time. All right, let me take a step back for a second and address a couple of things that might not be clear yet. I loved Scarlet and Violet. I loved that all of the Pokemon are actually existing and living their lives in this vast expanse of an island. I love that they eat and sleep and fall out of trees. They all live their lives seemingly with or without the player. It's engaging and it's really damn good at making me feel like I'm actually there. I love that there is so much of the world to actually explore and so many sights to see. There are a lot of interesting things to find in it. New Pokemon, items, Terra Raid Pokemon, and these mystic stakes in the ground that will be the only thing I don't spoil in this video because they are my favorite. And they just exude mystery and this sense of like, hey, What even are you? And obviously, as you could tell from earlier, I loved the story this time around. Way more than Sword or Shield, or anything since Gen 5, really. I think that the plot points and characters, even though some of them and their developments were really obvious, were really well written and enjoyable to experience and be around. Especially when it's time to go into the Great Paldean Crater and they start talking with each other alongside you, just having conversations like pals. It really makes me wish that they had implemented an optional game-wide partner mechanic throughout the game, a la Diamond and Pearl's temporary partner characters, but for the whole game. And number 2, contrary to what it probably sounded like at the beginning of the video, I don't think Scarlet and Violet is a bad game. Contrary to what I just said in number 1, I don't think it's a very good game either. What I do think it is a Pokemon game with a traditional Pokemon story structure that was broken up into little bits, shoved into an open world design jar, and because of that, there are some things that need lots of work. I think that there are a bajillion bugs that make the game incredibly hard to look at and sometimes even hard to play. I think that the exploration is somewhat stifled by a lack of level scaling and general intrigue from the beginning of the game, because you already know for the most part what you'll be up against before you even decide to go to that location, what with all of the extra information that the map gives you. And I think that the addition of some other quality of life changes and a bit more thoughtfulness could have really made the game something special, more accessible, and exciting like other open world games already are. But overall, I think that Scarlet and Violet is a step in the right direction for an open world design for an adventure for Pokemon. Now, how can I possibly say that after all of the negative things that I just said? It's because I already have great memories of Scarlet and Violet right after finishing the game. And those memories aren't of terrestrialization or having no level scaling or not being able to do the story events in whatever order I wanted. Those memories are of what Pokemon I caught and where I caught them living out in the wild. They're memories of me being distraught at how pitiful Arven's Mabostiff was, and how we just had to continue finding the Herba Mysticas to help him recover from his illness. They're memories of me beating Nimona into the ground after losing to her 8 times because why does Flower Trick crit every time? Stop it! Stop it! They're memories of me being in awe of the Great Paldean Crater, having new and weird Pokemon that I'd never even thought to think of before. I believe I have these positive memories because the game is designed like I'd imagine a real-life Pokemon world would be. You wouldn't stop every 10 feet because someone you barely know or care about or just met has something to say to you, unless there was something bigger at stake. And somebody wouldn't change the bracket of the finals of a really important competition just because someone deserves another chance or didn't write the fucking story right or something. I don't know. And surely, for sure, they would not stop you in the middle of your fucking championship bout to go, yeah, well, I'm just gonna destroy the world, so have fun with that, fuck your competition, and force you to go do the rest of the Pokemon team plot out of nowhere. Like, seriously, where were you the rest of the game that you have to stop us now, here, in this moment? This plot point could have been so many other places, and it killed all of my drive and desire to finish the Pokemon League or care about the story. Do it. Destroy the world. Unleash Eternatus, whatever the fuck that is. Just please don't do this again, for the love of God. I cannot stand Sword and Shield because of its ending, and because of so many other design choices, story included. To me, Pokemon feels like it's been a totally different experience than some of my favorites, like Platinum, Soul Silver, Heart Gold, and Black and White. The initial formula that Pokemon started with has so many changes made to it by this point that it's not the same, which is ironic because X and Y and everything since then has felt nothing but what I'd previously described as samey. But that's because what I meant is the overall experience of playing the last few games have felt the same. Lots of waiting through cutscenes for one-dimensional characters to finish their dialogue, but this time they've replaced the mainframe of the machine by changing the framing of the narrative. While many of the cogs on this machine are still the same as the old ones that they've used for years, I'd argue that this game's story and world are finally again about you, the player, and your relationship to those characters. Not about the cataclysmic plot point that you have to stop from happening because, oop, another one. The story design affected my desire to go out and explore and find more things out about the world and its people. That's good interactivity. It's your adventure. What you want to do and who you want to hang out with should matter. This was a Pokemon that felt like I was having an adventure again, and I feel like I can only say that about a handful of other Pokemon games. Now, I'm confident again that I'll be able to say that about more of the games sometime soon. Hey everybody, thanks so much for watching the video. If you stuck around this long, I really appreciate it. Go ahead and drop a like if you liked the video, and subscribe if you liked this video. Maybe I'll make more content of it. It would be really cool if you could. All right, thank you so much. Peace.